meditation is so much easier than most people experience. It doesn't need to be as difficult as people have been led to believe. It just needs to be approached in the right way to be easy, because meditation is not a practice to become more centered. Meditation is the state of being more centered, which is the result of a brain function. So what we want to approach here is the brain function. We're going to review quickly last week what we covered. So last week what we covered, if you missed that, were the stages of meditation. And I'm going to reiterate these every week because this is really important. I'm not going to go through them in detail like I did last week. You'll need to watch last week's to get that. But we always need to take these steps of meditation. If you're struggling with meditation at all, it is really important to take each one of these steps one step at a time. And so in this first step, we need to make sure our systems are in a state to be able to meditate. So think of it that way. So we need to relax the mind and observe the self. I'm going to go deeply into this today. And I'm going to go into it from a brain function perspective, and then we're going to expand from there. So this is a new piece to this class that I'm bringing in to be able to understand the systems and how they work. Once we find this state, once we are able to observe ourselves and relax our mind, we are able to go into stage 2 of meditation, which is phase 2 of my program, and center the mind, which we then do by observing the space. And I'll get more into that next week. Stage 3 is what I call phase 3 of my program, and that is to expand the mind. Now, this is a part that's often missed in meditation. A lot of meditation practices are taught as just centering and sitting in silence. Meditation means active listening. Meditation's designed to expand the mind, to get a new perspective. That's why we would say I'm going to go meditate on this, is because I'm going to go sit and I'm going to silence my mind so I can observe new information. So we're observing possibility. Stage 4, of course, is the most difficult phase. This is usually meditation of the masters, which is the stage of contemplation. And I'm going to get into why this isn't just the word a lot that I used to think it was. So I used to think to contemplate something meant to think about it, to analyze it, to ruminate on it. That is not what contemplation means. And so this is a new way of observing the new information. So we're going to do that next week, or not next week. We're going to do that in the next few classes. But this week, what we are going to focus on is stage 1. In this stage 1, today I really want to deepen our practice into stage 1 of meditation, and to be able to really capture that first level. The issue we have is that we don't capture that first level. We end up in this attempt to deepen and silence the mind while we're still in what I call a triggered state. And I'm going to get into the state of consciousness that we need to be aware of in stage 1. But what I want to talk about is a deeper level of that today, the why. And so when we are looking at meditation, there are 2 really critical stages of meditation. And first or foremost is we must be able to, first of all, relax the mind. And stage 1, the first step of all meditation is to be able to do that. Now, I know people that have been practicing meditation for over 30 years that are still learning to silence their mind, because they're approaching it from the fact that I'm going to willfully teach my mind to relax. I'm going to willfully bring myself to a place of silence. And when I achieve that, I'm going to see how long I can extend it. And I'm going to feel fantastic when I can have a silent mind for 5 minutes. And then I'm going to feel even better when I can do it for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 3 hours. And the issue with this is that takes decades of work because we're approaching it from the wrong direction. We are trying to use our conscious mind to silence our subconscious mind. Now, which is not completely accurate. I shouldn't word it that way. Let me try and say it this way. We have 86 billion neurons in our brain. And 3 billion of those, only 3 billion are conscious. And that's our prefrontal cortex. And when we're in those, when our energy is focused and we're centered in that prefrontal cortex, we're silent because we're observing. This is when we take in new information. So when we can finally just be in a place where we're only taking in information, I talk about this all the time. The brain is always doing one of two things. It is either gathering new information or processing the information it has. And so when we're thinking, when we're having what's called the monkey mind, when we're ruminating or analyzing, or any thinking process, when we're in our own head, we're processing. But when we're taking in new information, that is when the mind is silent. And we're in this stage trying to force a brain to do that, that's stuck in a brain function that's not doing that. And so we're trying to alter the brain function with 3 billion neurons. Now, of the 86 billion neurons, I think it's 73 billion, if I remember. It might be 76 billion. I think it's 73 billion of those are in the cerebellum. So the lion's share of our neurons, the neurons in our brain, are in this supercomputer that's our cerebellum. And I'm going to get deeper into that. But there's this part of our brain that is the genius part. And it's really funny because people talk about lizard brain and stuff, the oldest parts of the brain, like it is a lesser part of the brain. When these parts of our brain, now this isn't lizard brain, but the cerebellum is the part of the brain that controls all of our bodily functions, which are always running without our effort. It's what keeps us upright. And just think about that. Just think about the act of standing. Your muscles, and in fact, I don't want you to just think of standing. I want you to think of standing on one foot. And all the shifts. So for anybody that's done yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong, where you are focusing your balance on one foot, you become aware fairly quickly of all the little muscles that engage in the toes, throughout the foot, to try and maintain that balance. All through your legs, all those muscles are contracting and releasing to adjust as necessary. Your whole body. Think about being on a boat. Your body is constantly adjusting to those waves, to shifts. If there's wind outside, the body's adjusting to compensate for that wind and keep us upright. Now, that's just one function. That is just a function of standing, or standing on one foot, or standing on a boat, or standing in the wind. All of this, the body is adjusting constantly to everything. I am a person who, when I speak, I use my hands a lot. I can't control that. If I tried to, I wouldn't be able to communicate with you at the same time. And also, I'd be horrible at it. But for me, what I do here is almost like a dance. It's a physical expression. And so my body gets involved. But all of this is controlled by that larger, that really compacted, compressed set of neurons that are the genius of our brain, that a lot of the body memory, right? The ability to do what we do. I mean, you watch a baby and just trying to reach for something, a newborn baby trying to reach and grab for something, takes practice and building of motor skills. And so to try and adapt all 83 billion, so beyond even just the cerebellum, but all 83 billion neurons with just 3 billion neurons is it's an impossible feat. Now, you may have been able, or I knew I was able to control a certain amount at a time. I can choose to move my hands. I can go, okay, I'm going to move this. My subconscious mind's still involved, right? When I'm choosing to do something, it's still the one doing the work. But breath is a good example. I can control my breathing, right? But I can't control it all the time. If something happens that causes me to lose the ability to breathe, and that I have to do it consciously, I'm going to need the assistance of a respirator. I cannot continually remember, okay, beat the heart, breathe the lungs, do all these little things it does. And so I will never be able to completely control all of those mechanisms. But the bigger mistake I'm making is not in trying, but in thinking that the conscious mind knows what's best for me. It is not the conscious mind that knows what's best. The subconscious mind knows what's best for me, so I am never using my conscious mind to train my subconscious mind. What I'm doing with my conscious mind is experiencing different aspects of my subconscious mind. And when I'm a person that has monkey mind or that stresses, I'm experiencing the amygdala. I can experience a different part of the mind. I can experience the silence. And so instead of thinking of using my my conscious mind to control my subconscious mind, what I want to do is use my conscious mind to teach my conscious mind to be in the best experiences of my subconscious mind. So think of your subconscious mind as divided into multiple sectors. And so you have this part of your subconscious mind, which is the happy, blissful, peaceful part of you. Then you have, say, the triggered part, the anxious or depressed or confused or frustrated part of your mind. Then say you have the loving part of your mind, the part of your mind that you feel when you're around people that bring you happiness. And then you have the other part of your mind, the part of your mind of who you are at work. So the active meditation is supposed to be to not compartmentalize, but to bring ourselves into oneness. But before we are a master meditator, we need to be aware of those compartments. And in those compartments, realize all my conscious mind is doing is being in one of these compartments. Where if there's this centered, blissful state within me, I want to experience that no matter where I am. While I'm in relationships, while I'm at work, right? I was a person that before I learned how to meditate at this level, I was a person that every decision I made was about what other people thought of me. I was trying to adapt so that other people would like me. And it didn't work. It made it worse. It made people like me less. But it was a constant state I was in of trying to be liked, be accepted, be worthy, all these things that are inherent to that peaceful centered state. All the things that I wanted existed in the state I wasn't in because I was too busy trying to create the state, right? And so what I want to do is I want to learn that to relax my mind, I need to observe myself. This is the most important part of meditation practice. In any legitimate originated meditation practice. So if you look at where meditation originated, right? Meditation is everywhere and it comes in so many different sizes and shapes. And that's brilliant because meditation is so important. It's, I think, the most powerful tool for health. Medically, it is the very best thing for our body and mind. However, I think a lot of meditative practices, again, start try to start too far down the road, or stop. So if you think of beginning meditator to master meditator, so many meditation practices either forget all of this or only go this far because it takes so long. So meditation is taught as this thing that's going to take a whole life to master, which it's going to do that if we approach it from trying to achieve the meditative state. Instead, if we approach the brain function and can get the brain to activate the right functions, then it's a natural organic byproduct of that. So meditation no longer becomes a practice, it becomes a state of consciousness that we achieve by driving a brain function that activates that state of consciousness. And so to be able to do this, the very first thing we must be able to do, so starting at step 1, is to observe our states of consciousness. We must observe ourselves and become honest about where we are. The beautiful thing is if I'm in a practice that says I can be a master meditator in 30 days, I'm focusing on the master meditator piece, it is going to take much longer. And I'm not going to want to admit how far I am from it. So one of the things I talk about a lot is the fact that we tend to want to exist in the clouds. We want to convince ourselves we're in places we aren't really, because sometimes it's too painful to be where we are. So when I began my practice of truly, once I learned that it's brain function and not practice, I practiced meditation for 30 years. I practiced personal development, growth, all of the different. I have studied so many different spiritual paths, and over those 30 years, and I improved, and it felt like great improvement. But I was still in stage 1 4 years ago when I discovered, oh no, it's brain function. It's not the consciousness I'm going to try and create. I need to change the brain function, and the consciousness will be a natural byproduct of that. I did that with 4 years ago, and within a year was cured of PTSD. Now, my mind is silent most of the time, and when it's not, I can silence it quickly. And because I live in a meditative state, this is that quote of mine I shared. Meditation is not designed to be an act of stillness in a life of chaos. Meditation is designed to be living in stillness and easily managing chaos. And if we commit to the right kind of practice, we can get there quickly because we're training. We need to think of the brain as a muscle. And right now we've had a muscle that's taught us survival mechanisms of primates. And that muscle is strong, and we're all experiencing it. And we go back and forth, fight or flight, rest and digest. Well, there's another muscle in the brain we can develop that is newer to our species. It's still several thousand years old, but we've been developing it, and it's the muscle that master teachers like Buddha and Jesus and Muhammad and Martin Luther King Jr. I always go back to his speech about how having a vision of how we can all live together one day in harmony and peace, all of us. Regardless of our origination or our differences, that we can maintain our individual identities and still cooperate. Those moments are just the act of that brain function. And we tend to think these people are born, and they're probably born with it, and they're raised in it, because you look at Jesus and Buddha, and they were told from their birth that they had something important to say. Most of us didn't experience that. We were told often, as children are told, that they don't have something important to say. Most children are taught to listen to their elders. We don't listen to the wisdom of children enough. We're way better than we used to be, but it's a place where we need growth. So maybe we didn't get that. So we need to return to that state of using that brain function, but it's available for all of us. And you look at the teachers of the master teachers and their teachings, and they say that They say that. What I've done, you do it and more. Find your own Buddha nature. We all have it, and they're saying that. The problem is that we are trying to follow their path when they were already born to it. So their path wasn't one of activating this brain function. They had the brain function. And we can't follow that path. That's the end of the road. That's where we end up. And then we find our own Buddha nature. We find our own, what some call Christ conscious. We live more in that state, but we're trying to train ourselves to live in that state when we don't have the brain function yet. When we have the brain function, we'll organically live in it, but we need to develop that brain function. It's a muscle in our brain that's not developed. So we need to now develop it. And so we need to begin by observing where we are, and we need to be honest with ourselves. And this is what I'm going to suggest. There's a great saying from Jesus' teachings, which was about keeping your prayer to yourself, right? And the reason why, I think there's a lot. I think there is the point that's made that about casting your pearls before swine. But more important than that, this is a really vulnerable place. So we have to admit maybe we're not where we think we are. And if we've been practicing meditation for 30 years and we can stay in silence for an hour, but we're realizing that that could be our entire life, that meditation is not a state we need to come out of, that may be difficult because we may be going, wait, I've invested 30 years. But we need to observe ourselves so we can honestly say where we are. I spent over 30 years studying psychology, studying neuroscience, studying pharmacology, studying education, trying to understand the brain. And I put in 30 years of arduous effort. And I remember my therapist saying to me when she told me to leave therapy, because she told me, you're 96% healed. When's that going to be enough for you? And the ironic thing is I had put in all that arduous effort. And what she was saying is the best I could, I was 96% healed of the best I could expect for myself. And that put me at this place where I still had PTSD. I was still reactive. I was still trying to live up to others' expectations. I was still trying to fit in. And I was still not accepted. I was not loved in the environment I was in. I was rejected. I felt crucified. All of those things. And that was her 96% for me. The best medical science could expect for me given the condition I had. Right now, my opinion is that 4 years ago when I discovered this and I started to apply the principle to myself, that I was only about 4%. She had it backwards. I was only 4% of where I could be. I am now like 30 years of arduous effort got me this far. In the last 4 years, I've gone this far, and I am centered and grounded and happy. I'm so happy inside, and that's why I do this. I want to give that happiness to you. I want you to be able to feel inside peaceful and centered and loving yourself and engaged, because I never thought that was possible for me. I really did believe. Something in me said it's possible. When I was diagnosed with complex PTSD and addiction and told I'd suffer my whole life, something in me said that can't be true. It can't be true that I'm going to suffer my entire existence because of someone else's bad decisions. It can't be true. But everything else in me believed this was the life I was stuck with, that I had nothing else, that I could have nothing else. So, but after 30 years of concerted effort and the most dedicated practice to improve my psyche, so I at that point was focused on psychology and spiritual study. At that point, I was it was almost devastating to say, oh, I'm only at 4%. Because at that point, 96% from that point, I wasn't going to achieve before I died, right? 30 years only took me to 4%. And I was so much better. I was, from my perspective and what was possible for me, I was so much better. But I was, where I am now compared to 4 years from now, I wish everyone could have that. I wish everyone on the planet could have that. And we don't need to believe it's possible to get it. We just need to be willing to try to approach the brain function. And so, but to do that, the very first step must be, we must observe ourselves. And that's going to be our practice this week, is to connect with the internal body, the internal being. Next week, we're going to get into the instinct versus intuition. We'll go into detail, but this week I want to introduce you to the insula and what it does. And so we can practice at becoming more aware of ourselves. Okay, we tend to think we know ourselves and we know where we are, and we do. But there's an aspect of ourselves we don't know, and that is this internal working that's the somatic state of the body. So we have this insula that is constantly measuring our homeostasis. It's measuring what the body's doing, what the brain is doing. It's measuring everything, and it's making decisions. Now we have what neuroscience calls a second brain in our belly, and this is the most advanced study of neuroscience right now, is studying our guts and that brain that exists in there. And so it's a simplified version and not 100% accurate, but I want you to imagine your brain, having a brain in your gut and having a brain in your head, and that these two brains are constantly communicating with each other. So one is telling the other one what's going on. Well, if we're in a state that's triggered, then we're telling that brain up here, I'm not safe, and vice versa, this brain may be saying I'm not safe to hear. And so we get in these cyclic loops of fight or flight and rest and digest. And so we understand that's the amygdala triggering, and I do get into that in great detail in Introduction to Brain Chemistry. So there's a class on my website called The Relief of Suffering. That class is a free class, and it goes into that in detail. I'm not going to do that here. That's not what this class is about. So hopefully you've taken that class first. If you haven't, I do recommend it. Maybe take it in conjunction with this one, or take that one first and then come back to this one. It really sets up a fundamental understanding of how the brain works. But we have this internal body that is in states, and we can approach it from one or two ways. We can change the function of shrinking the amygdala by using the mind, or we can change the function of shrinking the amygdala by using the body. And so what I want to do this week is work on that relationship. Like I said, I'm going to go into the details of how that works later. But today's meditation is going to become about being aware of your body, becoming aware of your somatic state, and being really honest with yourself. And this is where I talk about keeping it to yourself. Be willing to be honest enough that you're like, you know what, I'm not going to share with anybody where I am right now. But I'm going to admit the places where I feel the least centered. And I am going to spend 30 days doing this practice. And I'm going to see where it takes me. It's going to be my own internal journey. Because the minute we involve other people, our expectations of relationship become involved. I'd like you to be able to do this for you. I could never fully honestly admit my limitations to others. I felt so much shame and guilt just for my existence. Not that I was doing anything to be ashamed of, but I just felt shame for who I was, and even the opinion I had of myself felt shameful. And so I really want to be able to acknowledge this part of ourselves, this part of us that feels this, but I want to spend the week practicing that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go into the meditation, But what I want to do is I want to walk you through an awareness practice, and that is going to be our meditation scene for today. Okay, I have that all set up so that you can not be distracted by watching me. I'm going to squeak for a moment while I adjust my chair. And so what I want to do right now is this week, I want you to be able to focus on just stage 1 of meditation. And you're going to get so adept at that this week that next week, as we begin to talk about stage 2 and the different levels of consciousness, you're going to be able to do the stage 1 part of your meditation easily. It's just going to be so second nature. Your brain's going to be trained in it that it'll be as easy as walking or eating or drinking or the things that we do every day. And if you have struggles with any of those, you will be able to notice an improvement. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to just think of 3 physical limitations you have. So these are things that you consider aspects of your body that are not doing what you wish they were doing. So this could be if you're not happy with your physical fitness, like how your body feels. It could be if you're not if your weight or your strength or your agility aren't what you want them to be. It could be something like that. It could also be, do you have an illness? Is there a physical illness in your body that you're suffering? It could be as simple as the aging process. It could be difficulty with a task. Like I say, most of us just walk and eat and don't think about it, but there are people that might have conditions that make that difficult. No matter how severe the condition or how minor, if it's important to you, write it down. You can write 3. You can write 3 to 5. If you don't do 3, if that's all you can come up with, do more if you want. But I want you to focus on no more than 5, no less than 3. And you're just going to write those down. And these are going to be your gauges for the week. So what you're going to do is you're going to be doing your meditation practice all week. And you're just going to be observing these. And over the next month, these 3 to 5 things are going to be your focus. Because we do want to understand the somatic state. And our body is an easy measuring tool. It's so easy. Consciousness is too, but it can be more complex. So the body makes a great measuring tool for the next month of practice. And so what we're going to do is we're going to become aware of ourselves, and we're going to become aware of our body and our mind. Our focus over the month of observation is going to be the body, but we're going to become aware of our mind too. And this is a great beginning practice for self-awareness. And so what I want you to do right now is just become aware of your body. How does your body feel right now? What is your state of consciousness? Or change that, not state of consciousness. What is your physical state right now? So how do your legs feel? How about your torso, your inner body? How's your breathing? Is it relaxed? Is it tense at all? What about your shoulders? are your shoulders feeling right now? Are they tense? Can you maybe let them relax? Becoming aware of your face, all those muscles. Some of us can sometimes hold our jaw tense. Is your jaw tense right now, or is it relaxed? Now, what about your mind, your consciousness? How do you feel about the things I've been talking about? Are you willing to try a different approach? Maybe a lot of the approaches I'm talking about you're already doing. Are you ready to explore something else? By the end of this process, I'll be taking you into creating your own practices beyond anything I teach. How do you feel right now about where you are in your meditation practice? Do you consider yourself an advanced meditator? Or do you consider yourself a beginning meditator? Do you feel like meditation is this great mountain you're trying to climb? How able are you to be silent? How committed are you to a meditation practice? Have you ever meditated? Do you meditate or try to meditate every day? Is meditation something you're just curious about? Or do you dedicate a significant part of your day to meditation? And is that meditation sitting in silence, or do you meditate in different ways? Just become aware. We're just becoming aware of where we are right now. And now, being a meditator or a non-meditator, the next thing I'd like you to become aware of where are you in life right now? Where are you financially? There's a lot going on in the world financially. I was in a class yesterday where the facilitator was talking about COVID and everything that's happening. And he said, no amount of money is ever as valuable as a single human life. And I think that becomes an important thing for all of us to consider. We tend to think of money as sustenance, and it can be. But our human life is the most important thing. And again, we can hire the best medical staff in the world. We can get the best medicines or eat the healthiest or exercise the most. But the best tool for health and well-being is meditation. Accurate meditation. Cultures that meditate are healthier statistically than cultures that don't. And to be able to achieve advanced meditative states early instead of needing it to be a life practice gains us those health advantages sooner. So whatever's happening financially, the best thing we can do is be healthy through it. So that's another topic. How is your health? How healthy do you feel? Do you feel your body is deteriorating, that it is becoming weaker or more aged with time, or do you feel yourself becoming stronger every day, more fit? What about relationships in your life? How are your relationships? All of your relationships. Personal relationships, social relationships, relationships to coworkers or to strangers. Be aware of exactly where you are today. Just for yourself. In this moment, if you commit to activating the right brain function, this is the worst your life will ever be. This moment. Even if your life is brilliant and beautiful, this is the worst it will ever be if you continue to improve your brain function. Life will get better every day. I often tell people that are new to the practices I teach, a little better every day. What if your life every day from this day forward could get a little better? So tomorrow will be a little better than today. And no matter how good it gets, the next day will be just a little better. We're told to settle, to be grateful for our life the way it is now, but that's not the nature of the human brain. The human brain wants to strive for more. But we tend to think that striving is laborious, so we tend to think we need rest from it and that it's going to exhaust us. When the truth is, growth is effortless. The body's doing it all the time. Cells are regenerating. What is no longer needed is being shed. The body is doing that. Think of your hair growing all the time. And in this experience of growing all the time, if we don't stand in our own way, if we don't get stuck and not participating in that growth, it's easy. It's easy for life to get better every day. So look at what you've written or what you've noted or what you're noticing in yourself and say, oh, this is going to improve. Tomorrow it's going to be better, and the next day it's going to be even better. Everything I'm experiencing in life right now is going to be better. As long as I apply to myself to the right practice. If I'm in a deteriorating state of not improving my brain, it's going to get worse. But if I'm in the state of improving my brain, 20 minutes a day, if I'm willing to invest 20 minutes a day in the most powerful medicinal tool available to me, I'm going to get healthier, happier, more whole. I'm going to feel stillness. I'm going to feel that centered state that is the purpose of practice. And so what I'd like you to do this week is to practice, is to be in the state of self-awareness. Just spend the week becoming truly aware of yourself. And you can change your list if you want, but you're going to pick 3 to 5 things you want to observe over the next month and that you want to observe getting better. So this week's practice is self-observation. Notice if you get into a conflict with someone. Notice if you're driving your car and you feel rage at the other drivers. Notice if you're frustrated with politics right now. Either side that you're on, whatever side you're on, If you're scared, if you find yourself worrying about things, capture those moments and become aware of them and say, okay, I'd love this to change. I'd love to not be so angry or frustrated or lonely. Become aware of where your most difficult parts of life are. This is what I'd like you to use for this class. Because if you do it and you follow the practices and you do them accurately, I promise you, I guarantee at the end of the month, you will feel different. So, but you have to become aware of self first. So we're going to talk more about that somatic state in a few weeks. We're going to get into instinct versus intuition next week. And we are going to learn how the brain works, how the body responds, and how to get the most out of both. And so until next week, I wish you a peaceful journey this week, and be gentle and kind with yourself. Whatever you're finding is not your fault. It's not a failing. It's just where you are right now from the experiences of life you've had and how your brain has known how to respond to them. It will improve, I promise. So until then, I hope you have a brilliantly beautiful week. And I do wish you tremendous success on your journey.